It's a little crazy with the kid and the dog.
I can't get my video to work today.
That makes me look adventurous.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
I know. Oh no.
Welcome to Bankruptcy. That was so bad.
That was the worst ever. That was so bad.
Hi everyone. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. I'm going to upload some housekeeping slides and our code of conduct for everyone to review while we all get settled in. I see everyone's sharing where they're from. Welcome, and we hope you're as excited to be here as we are to host. Going to pull up our slides now. Wonderful. So before we get going, I just wanted to talk about a couple of housekeeping items. My name is Mandy Ballinger. I'm the Director of Operations for Next Chapter, and I'm going to be moderating today's chat. So to make sure we have a smooth ride, just make sure to use the chat and communicate with each other as you're doing now. If you have questions, you can post those in the questions, and we'll try to get to some of those at the end for a Q&A. And we'll also share in here the code of conduct. I guess before I do, one other thing, if you experience any audio or visual issues, we've had a full house today, which is fantastic. We've actually reached our seat capacity. So make sure you keep your seat today, and just know that you want to make sure you have everything closed out as far as your tabs go on your browser, and have no other programs running. That's going to make for the smoothest experience we found. If you have audio visual issues, try giving a refresh or going out and back into the session. That's kind of taking care of some connection issues we've seen just because we've had a lot of people in here today. And then, we're also going to share the slides at the very end and a recording of all of today's sessions. So we're going to send that out as a recap in an email. So if for some reason you have to leave today's session, you can't see, you can't hear, no problem. We're going to send you recordings of everything. So just want to let everybody know you won't miss anything. We'll make sure it gets to you one way or another. And we've also got our code of conduct. Please take a look at this code of conduct. It is very important to us. We want to ensure that everybody's following the community guidelines. We want this to be a safe and inclusive space. So please take a look here. We're also going to share the link for the full statement posted by our community moderators in today. So we have Kelly and Tim as well. So they'll be around helping if you have any questions. And they'll be in the chat popping in here every once in a while. So if you want to see the full link, they're going to share that. And we do hope that you'll respect the code of conduct. We want to have a really good time where we're here and making sure that everyone's getting along. Wonderful. So before we get started, as I mentioned, my name's Mandy Ballinger, Director of Operations, and today is going to be a fireside chat talking about the future of transitioning into bankruptcy law from other areas of law. And it's a fireside chat with Ed Walters. So before we get started, I wanted to briefly talk about, why this is so important to talk about now more than ever. We all know we're going through this global pandemic. So since it started, there's been 3 million people not paying their mortgage. That number is continually going up. 1 in 4 businesses have shut down. And 22 million people have filed for unemployment. I know that number is continuously growing, even since we've shared this. So the economy is not going to be the same when we get done with this. It's going to be what we're predicting. There's going to be higher bankruptcy filings, and that's why you're all here today. A large spike in the filings is predicted, and attorneys need to be prepared. So this week is all about the different ways to help. You're here to prepare yourself. We're here to help in any way that we can. We've collected a lot of speakers and thought leaders to try to share any knowledge that they have to help everybody prepare for what may come. So now I'd like to welcome our speaker for the fireside chat, Ed Walters. And here's our sponsors as well. So Ed Walters is the CEO and co-founder of Fastcase. Under Ed's leadership, Fastcase has grown to one of the world's largest legal publishers, currently serving more than 900,000 subscribers from around the world. Ed is a member of the Virginia and District of Columbia bars. He's also been admitted to practice in the U.S. Supreme Court and U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth and Fifth Circuit. He is the adjunct professor at Georgetown University, where he teaches the law of robotics, a class about the frontiers of law and technology, which I think is pretty awesome. And today he's going to be talking about navigating the transition into bankruptcy law with us now. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you, Mandy. Give me a little thumbs up if you guys can hear me okay. I want to make sure the audio is all working well. So I also want to make sure that we're introducing Mandy today, because Mandy is an expert in her own right. Mandy has served as the Chief Operating Officer of Next Chapter and is the Director of Operations. She is the point person for the Paralegals as a Service program at Next Chapter. And she has served as a bankruptcy paralegal and really an expert in bankruptcy for a number of years. So this fireside chat, I think we'll probably end up asking a couple of questions of each other, because Mandy has as much expertise as almost anybody in the world of bankruptcy. So maybe I can do a couple of other housekeeping notes at the front. I know a few of you would like to meet my co-presenters other than Mandy. One of them is my kid, Myles, who is literally in an electric guitar lesson right now. I don't doubt that Myles will make an appearance at some point in here. My other co-presenter today, which I don't often get to present with in my talks, is Lego Walters, who is very excited about transitioning your practice to bankruptcy. Lego can barely contain himself and will almost certainly be making an appearance at some point today. A few other housekeeping matters. One, I know a lot of people have asked, is there CLE credit for the presentations today? And we haven't been able to get CLE approval in all 50 states. There's something like 2,500 people who are going to be participating in Bankruptcy Week. So we couldn't get pre-approval in the craziness of COVID-19 for CLE credit. However, we are going to give you a participation sheet that shows how long you were in it, and you can apply for CLE credit yourself. I recognize that's kind of an uphill climb, but if you would like to try to get CLE credit for any of these sessions, I would recommend that. Point two, if you are live tweeting this or sharing notes with friends, you can do that with a hashtag Bankruptcy Week, which you see in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Third, I just wanted to mention, I know that there has been some audio-visual hiccups with our live stream. I think some of these sessions are so popular, they're actually breaking the internet. If that happens to you, don't worry. After this session, everyone who signs up is going to get a link to a recording of it. You can watch that recording anytime you like, and I hope you will. My last housekeeping point is I want to announce here that every person who is registered for Bankruptcy Week is going to get a free introduction, an invitation to the BK Week Slack channel. And what I really hope we'll see here is already today, there's been a very strong, I would say, grassroots request for people to connect. People who are just getting into bankruptcy would like to get a mentor. People who are experienced in bankruptcy want to help their friends out. People who are in like geographic areas like Florida, New York, Texas, want to have like a kind of a master's group for bankruptcy in those jurisdictions. So everyone who is registered is going to get an invitation to the Slack channel. If you're not familiar with Slack, it's a great communications platform in real time. We're going to have individual channels for the different geographies. You will get it by email, but I think to preview it, it will be at bkweek.slack.com. You may not be able to log in right now. You may need to wait for the invitation. But when you get that, our hope is that we can continue the momentum of this week going forward. So after this week, when you're bringing bankruptcy law into your practice, you can connect with experienced practitioners, with bankruptcy paralegals, with experts in your neighborhood, in your community, people who can help you out with your individual jurisdiction. All right, that's a lot of table setting. I apologize for it. Sorry, we're out of time. I'll take questions. No, Mandy, go ahead. Why don't you kick us off?
All right, sounds good. Let's see here. So we've got, let's see, and I just want to share, this is just funny. Bankruptcy week is better than Shark Week. I saw that in the comments. That's kind of hilarious. Okay, so today's just like a fireside chat. So Ed and I just kind of want to, we have some questions here I wanted to ask Ed to talk about, and I can share my thoughts on it too. To have kind of an open discussion about everything that's really going on, what this means for attorneys and adjacent markets to bankruptcy, and why everyone's here today. So Ed, if you don't mind, I'd love to talk with you about talking about the trends that are happening with law firms and the legal industry as a whole right now with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, well, thanks, Mandy. So, I in my capacity as the CEO of Fastcase, we interact with a lot of lawyers. There's 34 state bar associations who work with Fastcase, and 900,000 lawyers in those associations who have access to Fastcase. So we talk to a lot of them, and we're hearing a universal chorus that all legal activity, all filings are down, and not down a little bit, but like way down. Right. So you can see this in the Clio Legal Trends Report. You can see this anecdotally in your bar association. There's just a ton of activity that's missing from the system. And of course it is, right? Clerk's offices are closed, courts are closed, clients aren't coming into the office to bring in legal questions. It's kind of hard to connect with them even when you can, right? And so, we're seeing this in Fastcase with some legal research trailing off during the months of March and April, though it's starting to pick up a little bit in May. We're seeing it in Next Chapter. Mandy, you can back me up on this, but I think that the filings were way up for March when lawyers in their practice said, man, bankruptcy courts might not be open for a little while yet. But then starting in April and May, the filings themselves start to trail off. Now, I would say filings in this case, and again, Mandy, back me up, are kind of a trailing indicator, right? So it'll be weeks or months before we start to see the new petitions hit the system. But I think in a conversation between Jack Newton of Clio and Janine Sickmeyer, the CEO of Next Chapter, Jack described it as the way the water recedes before a tsunami, right? And you can really see that across a number of different practice areas, but certainly in bankruptcy. All of the filings, all the legal activity drops off for a couple of months. And then all of it kind of backlogs, right? And then over a short amount of time, July, August, September, you're going to see all of those filings coming in along with whatever would have happened in July, August, September. God bless, July, August, September will all come in at the same time. And so one thing that I think is really important, one of the reasons we're doing Bankruptcy Week right now in the beginning of May, is that when this happens, it's already too late, right? If the bankruptcy world creates a ton of demand for people to reorganize their debts in September, you can't start your practice in September. So one of the goals of Bankruptcy Week is to say, let's start now to get ready to add bankruptcy to our practices so that by the time our clients need it, we'll be ready. So I imagine for many law firms, it's pretty quiet right now. And I think that we'll see a ton of increased demand across the spectrum, but maybe especially in bankruptcy.
Yeah, I would say seeing what we have seen with the figures so far with Next Chapter and the usage within the system, the number of cases being started is continuing to grow still. but we're just not seeing the filings happening. And that's just the simple logistics as well. I mean, even if you had an existing practice where you're working in bankruptcy, if you've been working in your office and you've got the brick and mortar style, now you have to figure out, how do you navigate your client signings virtually? How do you navigate collecting the documents that maybe they dropped off physically to your office? So a big transition that's occurring is attorneys having to learn and figure out, how do you go from doing everything maybe on paper and maybe doing it in office? You need to switch everything to be virtually. So that's been I think a big roadblock for a lot of law firms as well. And that's what this week is good for, figuring out what tools, what technologies, what services can you use that's going to streamline all of those processes that you just simply can't do the same as you did before. So it's kind of a twofold. Some people are here to learn more about bankruptcy, but then also learning how to be a law firm that works entirely from home, or mostly remote in that sense. So, like I said, we're still seeing the need is there. The cases are being started, but then it's that backlog too of, how do I administer these cases? How do I collect everything I need? How do the hearings work? I think we heard from an attorney the other day who just had his first hearing getting scheduled in a couple months now. And if some courts were doing telephonic hearings, they were switching over. Some simply weren't. So there's going to be a little bit of a bottleneck there as well. And that will be something to navigate and figure out as people move forward. But the trends are definitely not going away for the number of cases and the number of people that need relief. It's just how to push through some of the roadblocks that are coming up now, I think, is what we're seeing in next chapter, at least.
Well, and I think it can be intimidating, right? If you are a general practitioner, how do you add bankruptcy to your practice, right? If you suspect that a lot of clients are going to need help with bankruptcy, how do you do that? And I don't have the answers. I was a kind of a beer and softball lawyer when I was in practice. I certainly didn't have a specialty in bankruptcy. But I can point to other sessions for Bankruptcy Week that are amazing for this. So before this session, I just watched Ron Drescher's kind of intro to bankruptcy law. And I think it was so popular, it broke Livestorm, the app that we're hosting this in. There's a ton of people who were trying to get in the room and couldn't because there were so many people kind of crushing the room. We added another session with Ron to the 2 that were already planned. So now there are 3 sessions with Ron Drescher that are really great intros to bankruptcy law. If you've never filed a bankruptcy petition before, Ron's session is a really good how-to. I know he also runs like a separate bankruptcy camp we can talk about. But in our conversation right now, Mandy, I think at a high level, we'll cover a couple of the things that a small firm or solo practitioner or like a law firm that hasn't handled bankruptcy before would have to do to get ready to file bankruptcy cases for clients, right? To be able to prepare and file bankruptcy petitions, you can't do it right out of the box. So how do you get ready? And that's sort of what we'll be talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of leads to one of the next questions we have up here. So really, why should, how do bankruptcy law and other areas of law, so, adjacent markets like family law, small business, how does it go hand in hand, and why does it make sense? If you are a family law, if you do have other areas, like besides the need, why does it make sense to do bankruptcy and to consider picking this up as well?
Yeah, it's a challenge, right? I mean, one thing I'll say is that, law is a very conservative profession. And sometimes that works for us. It is like a rudder against the storm, right? But sometimes it works against us. In a world that's changing very fast, the conservative nature of law works against us. The needs of our clients are changing very, very fast. And in some ways, our practice has to change with them. So in a fast changing world, for a law firm, for a lawyer, for a business person, there's nothing more dangerous in a fast changing world than doing nothing. So, in a large conversation between, the two of us, Mandy, the conversation we're having with Ron Drescher and others, with Jack Newton, who will do the closing keynote for this conference. One of the things we're talking about is having a law firm that is very client-centered, right? One of the biggest trends of the last 20 years for software, for consumer businesses, is to put the client, the customer, really in the center of that experience. You think of the best consumer brands like Zappos or Amazon or Netflix. They are where they are because they put consumers right in the center of their business. And that's what we're talking about doing for law firms, to orient our law firm practice to the needs of clients, right? Go where the clients are. And so, I think that this is going to be a very interesting time for that. I think people who have done bankruptcy practice in the past have a kind of a traditional way of onboarding clients, of finding new clients. Unfortunately, for a lot of 2020, I think the regular clients of our law firms are going to need help reorganizing their debts, right? And so, we can talk about this, about how bankruptcy law and other areas of law, other types of practice sort of go hand in hand. If you are a family law lawyer, maybe you specialize in those kinds of custody or TROs or divorce or prenups. You might have like a kind of book of family business law with a lot of clients. Well, these clients are going to need to reorganize their debts, right? Mandy, your statistic was 22 million people have filed for unemployment. I think by now it might actually even be as high as 30 million. And it wouldn't surprise anybody if that number jumps by a lot. These are the same people who come to see your law firm, right? If you help small businesses to set up their organization, set up an incorporation in a state, or if you help small businesses to deal with tax or accounting, those same clients are going to have questions about how to reorganize their debts, how to keep creditors at bay while they work things out, how to extend some of the payments that they have in a structured way through the end of the year. And so this is an interesting opportunity for lawyers to help people in the way that most lawyers went to law school to do. This will be the hardest time in a lot of families' lives. For small businesses, actually for large businesses, for most businesses, it's going to be an extraordinarily difficult year, right? And so this is a service that law firms can provide. It's counseling about how to deal with your debts, what options are available, how the law can help people to keep creditors at bay or organize debts in a way that makes them payable. And so I think one of the things we'll see over the course of this year is that a lot of law firms and lawyers who didn't consider themselves like pure bankruptcy lawyers will become, at least for part of their practice, bankruptcy lawyers. And by the way, law firms are businesses too, right? So during this time for the next 4 or 5 months, when there is a lull in legal filings, in litigation, and family law practice, how do we make up for that lost revenue in a law firm? One way to do it is being very, very client-centered. And when clients need bankruptcy assistance, make sure that your firm is going to be able to offer that kind of help, right? And so it's from a business perspective for a law firm, right? This is an interesting opportunity to help clients, to be client-centered, to cross-sell clients who are not bankruptcy clients and offer them bankruptcy services, and then to acquire new clients, right? To help people reorganize their debts in bankruptcy, and then maybe help them when they have a corporate organization matter later or a family law issue down the road. And I think you'll see, as many lawyers have, when you save somebody's bacon, when you are there for them in the roughest, toughest, most difficult part of their life, you've got a friend and a client for life, right? When you help someone reorganize their debts in bankruptcy, when they have a problem, when they need to file a divorce, when they need to, do a contract in their restaurant, they're going to remember that service that you provided in the summer or fall of 2020 and that terrible COVID-19 year. and they're going to bring it back to you. So this is a great opportunity kind of across the business of running a law firm to bring new clients in, to help people to cross-sell your existing clients and to build a new client base, for the next 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the point you made of, these attorneys that are going to go into this may be their next leg of their journey. This is where the need is. And so this isn't going to be a short-term thing by any means. And I remember in 2008, during the last recession, which I think is going to be maybe peanuts compared to this, but during that time, I remember a lot of attorneys that were new, that weren't in bankruptcy, and they weren't even sure what they were going to do for their practice necessarily. And to this day, they're still bankruptcy attorneys. I became pretty good friends with a lot of them during that time. And as we were working on cases with the trustee's office, and that's where they went, that's where the need was, and that's where they were able to help clients, and that's what shaped really their career. So I can see that happening for a lot of attorneys as well, and kind of guiding where they go with their practice, especially newer attorneys who are looking to kind of find their way as well.
Yeah, and maybe I can add something here too. I mentioned it at the top, but let me mention it here as well. I think one of the most important things that's going to come out of Bankruptcy Week, one of the things that I hope comes out of Bankruptcy Week, is that you can connect with a mentor. I think this community is going to be a real asset. This is not a zero-sum business, right? There are so many people that are going to be reorganizing their debts. It's not like any bankruptcy practice can help all of them, right? And so what's really interesting about this time is that you will see a lot of bankruptcy lawyer mentors who are trying to help people add bankruptcy to their practice as quickly as they can. There's so many people who are going to need help. There's more than enough business for everybody. And so if you're just getting started, I hope the Bankruptcy Week Slack channel will be a good forum where people can connect with mentors. And again, this is not like, I'm not trying to sell Slack or something, right? Slack will be free to you. This is not a subscription service from Fastcase. I'm not advertising like a product. This will be like a free forum, a free community where you can connect with a mentor, someone who can answer some simple questions, someone who can guide you. And I think that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to coming out of Bankruptcy Week, is the community that builds around helping people to reorganize their debts.
Absolutely. And as much as bankruptcy is federal, it's jurisdictional. It is so varied by state. It is so varied by all of the jurisdictions within each of the states, the trustees, the judges. And working at the trustee's office, that was the biggest advice the trustee always had for new attorneys, is you really need to connect with people who are going to help and who are going to be able to guide you and not piss off the trustee and not make the judge mad. They have their ways, and they have the way they like to have things done. And so use the knowledge that's out there. And like we've seen today, I think it's been amazing watching the chats during Ron's and even during Janine's keynote, people wanting to connect, not just with bankruptcy attorneys, but saying, hey, I'm in the Eastern New York district, who can help me out with this? And people jumping to say, yes, I want to email you, I want to reach out, I want to talk to you. The willingness of the experienced and those in the areas, and the willingness of each other wanting to figure it out together, I think is huge. And it is a area of law that does have a lot of things that are just varied by where they're working too. So just getting that general knowledge is great, and then having those networking and connections and working together is even more invaluable.
Mandy, this is something that actually many lawyers might not know. I certainly didn't know it before working in this area in software, but for each jurisdiction, each of the 92 different bankruptcy jurisdictions, each federal court has its own kind of filing practice. There's different forms for each one of them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so each district's going to have local forms. In the districts, they even have variances on how they want the income to be reported. You're going to have to report your current income and the last 6 months of the debtor. So we experience this all the time as a software to try to make sure we're compliant. And it's like building software for 92 different districts. We have to make those variances available to make sure it's compliant with what the courts want to see, even as simple as how a case is filed to the court. The order of those federal documents varies. The courts want to see it all a little different. So we try to do things at Next Chapter to make sure that information's available with like help centers, and we try to glean that information from our users too. And they say, oh, well, actually, I know the trustee likes it this way. We'll try to help in any way that we can to make sure that it's always compliant. But that's usually like a knowledge base. It's just an experience based thing. Sometimes you can find it if you're on the specific court site, finding that information, the clerk's information on how they prefer things to be done. But again, it's invaluable to have someone who knows those answers too, that can kind of give you a little nudge in the right direction. That's huge because it is varied.
Well, if it takes a village, we can build the village right here.
Absolutely. So looking at some other questions we had here. So what would you recommend as, to add bankruptcy to your practice? Again, looking high level, where would you start? So we've talked about this BK week, Slack, and networking and communicating with people. What other recommendations would you have, Ed?
Yeah, well, so I was going to maybe show a slide or two. We had the NACBA slide up for quite some time, and I'll certainly share that here, but maybe I'll just skip ahead to that slide. So I would say in the same way that it helps to have a mentor, right? It helps to have an association around you as well, people who know what they're doing. And I just can't recommend highly enough NACBA, the National Association of Consumer Bankruptcy Attorneys. I'll give them the shout out here. It is the kind of main specialty bar association for people on debtor side of the practice. And they throw a great annual meeting in years when we can have annual meetings. There's a ton of great materials in there, as well as member benefits. Please cut me some slack when I say this. This is not me trying to sell it. I'll just say that one of the member benefits of being a member of NACBA is free access to Fastcase. You get the whole suite of bankruptcy cases that you can research in the Fastcase legal research system for free. Again, not me selling it. If you are a member of 34 state bar associations, you may already have that as well. Fastcase also includes, though, a bunch of new bankruptcy materials. So if you have free access to Fastcase through your bar or through NACBA, I would say look out for the new secondary materials that are in that resource. So Morgan King is an expert in bankruptcy. He has a lot of treatises and a lot of great bankruptcy information in the Fastcase website. Also, the American Bankruptcy Institute. I know most people think about ABI as kind of a creditor side bankruptcy organization, but there's also debtor side lawyer materials inside of ABI as well. And inside of Fastcase, there are more than 30 books by the American Bankruptcy Institute, including like getting started with a debtor's practice, right? And so I think that those materials, when you're getting started, can be an invaluable resource. I will say, like, instead of trying to figure it out yourself, talk to the experts, right? In that same way, I'll just make one more call out for this community. If you can help somebody, if you can be a mentor, please do that, because this will build your community. It's a great source of referral business for later. And if you need a mentor, I would say look for them. Look for them here in this community, in the Slack channel. There's also a Facebook group and a LinkedIn group that have been started organically by members of the Bankruptcy Week community. You'll see links to those in the chat and in the questions. And again, these are just groups of people who want to help each other, right? Which is great. Mandy was talking about how there's different forms in each of the 92 different district bankruptcy courts, right? Every one of them has different forms that they require. Even though bankruptcy law is federal, the jurisdiction that you file bankruptcy petitions in can be very particularized. And so one thing that I'll say here, and again, pardon me for being self-serving, is that good software makes a difference here. So Can I tell a story? I'm from Louisiana, and it's a kind of a storytelling culture. So um, it won't be a fishing story, right? But so a number of years ago, a friend of mine at LexisNexis called and said, "Hey, we are getting rid of our bankruptcy filing software. Would you like to buy it?" And I said, "Yeah, that would be great." And so Fastcase acquired from LexisNexis this bankruptcy petition filing software called Collier's Top Form and File. And it used to be like in the 80s, like the big software that everyone would use to file these things. It was desktop. Um, it was antiquated, right? When we acquired the business, it was a CD-ROM business. Like you would literally call Lexus on the phone, and you couldn't do it online. And you would, give them the credit card over the phone, or they would ask you to mail them a check. And when they got the check, they would put the disc into a FedEx envelope and FedEx it to you, so you could load the disc into your computer. My computer doesn't have like a disc player anymore, but this was for the era when they did. And it was PC only. And so our conjecture was, hey, we will take this software that does something very useful from Lexis, and we will move it to the web. And we did that, and I think we did a pretty good job at it. But in parallel, Mandy and Janine Sickmeyer and the Next Chapter team were also building for the web from the start. Born on the web software to file bankruptcy petitions in each of the 92 jurisdictions. So while we are laboring to move this like crusty, very brittle desktop software onto the web, Mandy and Janine were building this beautiful, elegant, fast-moving, fast iterating, drop-dead, gorgeous, easy-to-use software for the web. And when we had the opportunity to work together, we said, look, Next Chapter is way better than the software that we built for this purpose. And that's why Fastcase got involved with Next Chapter in the first place. We just said, there's no sense in trying to build software that is going to be better than Next Chapter, what Next Chapter already does. Let's combine forces with the top form and file software that Fastcase owned, Fastcase BK, with Next Chapter. And it's no surprise, Next Chapter was so much better. The software, when we combine Fastcase BK and Next Chapter, is called Next Chapter. It's a million times better. It's, sort of built for the web and accessible anywhere, right? I'll just mention, like, there's a ton of lawyers who use Best Case for this too. Best Case, I think, is the industry leader, and it's very good software, lest you think this is a big commercial. So the one thing I will say though is, if you're going to help clients file bankruptcy petitions, you need bankruptcy petition software. It's going to help you file your petition, and it's going to be particularized for the court that you are filing in using their particular forms. Mandy wasn't exaggerating. It is like having 92 different software systems because every court's is different. I'm not going to say that Next Chapter is the only petition prep software out there. It's just by far the best. All right, commercial done. Almost done. The other thing I'll say is that in addition to a mentor, in addition to professional associations, in addition to books, in addition to software that helps you file petitions, the other thing that I think is really useful is paralegal help. So this is maybe the most important secret that I will tell you about being a practicing bankruptcy lawyer. It is that the greatest asset in the world for a bankruptcy lawyer is a bankruptcy paralegal. Paralegals do 85%, 90% of the work that is done to prepare most bankruptcy petitions. Some of the greatest experts that I have met in bankruptcy practice are bankruptcy paralegals, because they interview clients, because they do the data entry into the software, because they know the peculiarities of the filing. I mean, really, Mandy, this should be a fireside chat with you. You have forgotten more about bankruptcy law than I will ever learn, right? And so this is another thing that I would just like to point to, which is that in Next Chapter, there is like this core of ninja paralegals who understand bankruptcy really well and who can just help you file bankruptcies. I've talked to a lot of firms who have said, look, I want to do bankruptcy. I would love to have the help of a paralegal. I don't know that I've got 12 months of work for a paralegal, right? And I don't want to have like a temp come in and have them not know what they're doing. And so this is the idea behind the Paralegals as a Service program from Next Chapter. It is a crew of paralegals who are experts in bankruptcy filing and who can work on an individual matter for a week, for a month. You can hire a paralegal for as long as you need to without having to worry about being for a full year, right? So Paralegal as a Service, you've got the URL on here. You can find it on nextchapter.com as well. Is a great way to add paralegal help for your practice without having to incur the overhead costs of hiring a full-time paralegal and training them up and making sure they know what they're doing. So virtual paralegals you can hire into your practice right now. And one thing I will say is, in the same way that you can't start your bankruptcy practice when you've got a flood of people who need bankruptcy help, you need to get out ahead of it. I would say don't wait for a virtual paralegal. If you want to get into bankruptcy law, I would say contact a virtual paralegal and see which one is the right fit for you. Help them understand what you need to do in your practice, but get involved with a paralegal before you have your first case. And it's not expensive. You can get started with a virtual paralegal for like $50, right? And I think we probably have a link to that. I don't know if you guys can post a link to the virtual paralegal service, but if you can't, you can go to www.paralegalasaservice.com or nextchapter.com and work with a bankruptcy paralegal like that. Again, not a commercial. If there are good bankruptcy paralegals in your jurisdiction, find them, work with them, get their help, because bankruptcy paralegals are the secret weapon. That is the secret sauce. If you go to any successful bankruptcy practice, the engine of it, the thing that really makes that practice go, is paralegal help.
Absolutely. And I will say, not a plug for our service necessarily. I am speaking on Wednesday at 2. If you guys want to hear, if you've never worked with a bankruptcy paralegal, I talk about why I think paralegals are essential if you're working in bankruptcy specifically, not even contract or virtual, just paralegals in general are going to be the lifeblood of what you do. And then also best practices for working with them as well. Pieces to working on a bankruptcy case, and a paralegal can help you with that. And I'm sorry, I think I'm having some internet issues. Hopefully I'm back here. Okay, sorry about that.
We can hear you.
Awesome. Can you hear me okay still, Ed? Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay,
fine.
great. Yeah, and we have, I think there's going to be a link shared in here. Great.
So while we're putting that up, Mandy, maybe
Wonderful.
we can talk for a little bit about some onboarding issues and some ways that bankruptcy clients might be different than working with other legal clients. So
yeah, absolutely. Working with a.
Go ahead, Mandy.
A little bit about what we were just talking with onboarding. Go ahead.
No, sorry, I was going to take a sip of my coffee, but you froze for a second. Today's presentation is brought to you by Politics and Prose Bookstore and Coffee.
Yeah, I'm having some issues. I might let you take the lead on this one. My screen keeps freezing up and telling me to refresh, but I'm afraid to refresh. I don't want to lose out.
I would say just hang tight.
And if you don't mind kind of talking about that for a minute, I'm going to see if I can connect.
Yeah, so Mandy mentioned that I'm a law professor for most of the year, and this might be a good opportunity for me to take the lectern. So one thing I'll say is that bankruptcy clients are often different than your run-of-the-mill clients, depending on your practice, right? People who are reorganizing their debts sometimes don't recognize that's what they need to do. Their problem doesn't seem like a bankruptcy problem. It might seem like a rent problem. It might seem like a mortgage problem or a student loan problem. It might seem like, negotiating with a leaseholder if you're a small restaurant or something. The second thing I'll say about it is that, people who are filing for bankruptcy are going through the worst time of their lives. There are people who are experienced with that in law. Like if you're a family law lawyer, you are accustomed to dealing with people who are really going through the worst part of their life. If you do healthcare law or trust and estates, maybe you're familiar with this. But let me just say, it will not be uncommon when dealing with bankruptcy clients that they are suffering as badly as they ever have. The third thing I want to say about this is that bankruptcy clients are classically what Bill Henderson would call the people law sector. The vast majority of legal matters are people law. And whether it's a small business or an individual, it really is people law. And one feature of people law is that it is not a super lucrative practice, right? How much you can make for an individual bankruptcy filing will vary by jurisdiction. And I think Ron Drescher actually might cover this in his session. It is not a way to get rich quick, right? You're not going to have like $1 million fee on a consumer bankruptcy case. I think your traditional bankruptcy case might be $2,000, and sometimes that's fixed. So it's very difficult to make a lot of money on one matter. And so that's one of the reasons I would say that bankruptcy law is a volume business. The way that you can help the most people is to take on a lot of clients. And the way to make money with a bankruptcy practice is you have to handle a lot of bankruptcies. And so that's another reason that you should use bankruptcy software, because it allows you to be much more efficient when filing bankruptcies. It's a reason that you should use a bankruptcy paralegal, because they will be much more efficient in handling your bankruptcy cases. And if you have to do it at volume, you want to take every advantage that you can, right? Mentors can help you with this. Paralegals can help you with this. Software can help you with this. But think of it like a volume practice. This is not something where you're going to make money hourly, right? This is a place where you really need to be very efficient while serving your client zealously in helping them to prepare a petition. Another thing I'll say about that, because it's a volume business, you need to be very efficient in your practice. All right. So I would say that calls for practice management software. So Clio is my favorite. I'm a partisan. Fastcase is a longtime partner with Clio. We're like their first integration partner with APIs. Fastcase natively integrates into Clio. Next Chapter natively integrates into Clio. It's why we invited Jack Newton, the CEO of Clio, to be the closing keynote for this conference. If you are looking to run an efficient practice, Clio is the way to do it. It can help you understand your utilization. It can help you access documents. And most importantly, it can help you bill clients and get paid faster. On that note, I will just say that LawPay is another great way to help bankruptcy clients pay you faster, allowing you to take credit cards, allowing you to get paid right away, and allowing you to get paid faster, to get that money in your account faster. The combination, there is this kind of like holy nexus in bankruptcy between Next Chapter, Clio, and LawPay. Maybe Fastcase in there too if you're doing legal research or looking for the bankruptcy books. But these are like the core parts of your business, and they are tools that are built for small law firms, right? Again, there's other ways of doing this. You could, I guess, take Stripe or something in your practice, but it won't integrate with your practice management system. You can use other practice management softwares. There are plenty of them. I just think that I'll make the plug for Clio, and not just because they're sponsoring Bankruptcy Week. I think it's terrific software, and I think you'd be hard pressed to find better people and better customer service than with the Clio team. One more thing about dealing with bankruptcy clients is it's not only a people law business, it is a people business, right? And so this is an opportunity for you to exercise some of the things that got you into practicing law in the first place, to help people. It's a practice of empathy and compassion, and it will require some bedside manner, and really understanding your clients and putting them at the center of your practice. So yeah, I think the volume part of the business will affect that dynamic. If you're going to take in bankruptcy clients, you need to prepare yourself to take on a lot of bankruptcy clients. And that might mean adjusting the way that you do client intake, the way that you attract new clients, right? You might need to advertise your practice or that expertise on new channels. You might need to get on, some social sites if you're not accustomed to it. That might be LinkedIn, that might be Facebook. I know a lot of lawyers who say, I only use Facebook for grandkids' pictures. Let me tell you something. If you look at some of the most successful consumer practices in the world, they have very active Facebook pages because that's where people are. I'm from Louisiana. I do a lot of fishing. One thing I know about fishing and running a law firm, fish where the fish are, right? And your customers are on Facebook. It may not be something that you're accustomed to advertising on or conducting social media campaigns on, but I would encourage you, expand your boundaries here. This is the time and the place to do that.
I hopped off and on back here. Looks like I took care of my technical issues. Ed, I want to kind of talk a little bit too about you're discussing, how to work with the clients, being where they are, and the differences with working with the consumers that are needing help from the bankruptcy code. And one thing I noticed, again, I worked through the 2008 recession and bankruptcy. I didn't work in the traditional sense as that I was a paralegal for an attorney. I was actually the paralegal for the trustee's office, administering the cases and reviewing them. One thing that really struck me, and I think this really, it's still prevalent now, we saw in the Clio Legal Trends report, where they really focused on the accessibility of attorneys to the clients and how I think they surveyed about 1,000. They tried to call the law firms, email them, see who would respond, and they would get literally no response. And that was really high numbers that they found. And it seemed kind of surprising, but that's what I remember from 2008 as well. We would always answer the phone at the trustee's office, and we're there to administer the cases. So a lot of times I was working directly with the debtors because they couldn't reach their attorneys. There was only so much I could do. Didn't work for their attorney. You would have to refer them to the bars or to try to find a new attorney if they wouldn't be accessible. But I think one of the realities is when going through a tough time like that, there is a higher level of help and handholding and accessibility that needs to be expected, anticipated, and finding ways to be effective with that through technology, whether you're using things like Zoom and Google Hangouts. The use of a paralegal, I think, is huge with that. A paralegal is that open communication between the client and the attorney, so that the attorney isn't at the client's beck and call, and that's good. But they still need to be supported and to be felt supported as well. So I think that's an important thing for attorneys who might be new to working with consumers, and especially ones going through these really tough times right now, to understand that like open level of communication needs to be established one way or another, and in an effective way as well, that you're still going to be able to maintain the caseload and grow your caseload, and looking towards things like technology, paralegals. How are you going to be able to manage this new need for a higher level of communication with your clients?
Yeah, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention here as well. If you're building for volume and you're getting a lot of calls and a lot of clients calling in during the process, a great way to handle that is with Ruby Receptionists, right? Ruby is also a sponsor of Bankruptcy Week. I don't want to leave them out here while I'm plugging our friends. Ruby is outsourcing your front desk at a time where you might not have anyone at your front desk. Sometimes the front desk is you, or your spouse. And I would say that Ruby Receptionist is a great way to make sure that you are returning those calls. And I know Jack Newton will talk about this. This is his book, The Client-Centered Law Firm, which just came out last year. Great book. It really is about how to build your practice using all of the tools that consumer brands like Zappos and Netflix and others did, but to do that in your law firm, to learn the lessons that Jack and his team at Clio learned in building one of the most popular, successful legal software businesses in the world, and to apply that to build your law firm. And Jack will cover in his closing keynote, which I'll plug here. You should absolutely attend that. What he learned in the Legal Trends Report and what he learned in surveying clients who want to hire law firms. Sometimes it's the easy things. 85% of life is showing up. Answer your phone. Make sure you're there for clients. And if it's too many calls to answer, use someone like Ruby Receptionist who can help you get to those volume of calls. By the way, if it sounds like I am, sort of plugging all of our sponsors here, it's because I am. We invited companies to sponsor Bankruptcy Week who we know are very successful at helping law firms to extend their practice, right? And we vetted that group very carefully. There are plenty of companies that do this, but I'll just say, if you look at the list of sponsors who sponsored Bankruptcy Week, they are the same partners that are going to help you add bankruptcy law to your law firm. So yes, I will mention them because they are generous sponsors and they allow us to do this entire week for free. And also because they are awesome. They're the best in the business at what they do.
Awesome. When we've got about 5 minutes left here, I was going to go through and check out some of the questions that we've been receiving throughout and maybe ask a couple here if we have time.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's take some questions.
Okay.
As long as they're not about my cat, who has not made an appearance so far.
Yeah, a little MIA. So we talked about bankruptcy law being federal. And we've had this question for attorneys coming to Next Chapter. Do you still need to have a state bar license to practice in a statewide bankruptcy courts? Because we do have attorneys who will come in and they do want to help a client that they receive. Maybe, it's a client you've had for another area of law, but you do need to be licensed in the state that you're practicing in for bankruptcy. So it is federal, but yes, you do need to be a part of the state bar license for that as well, for wherever you're practicing. Let's see. Sorry, let me go through, find another good one here. Last bankruptcy filing was 2018 for this person. At that time, we had to get wet signatures and keep it in wet. Has that changed? Is that per district? That's something that, again, your software is really going to help you with in making sure that you're compliant. There are a couple districts that do require wet signatures, and they are adjusting the statutes on that given the pandemic and the restrictions that are out there right now, California Central being one of them. But yes, they do allow for electronic signatures on almost all of the districts. There's a couple exceptions. So that's where I would, again, rely on things like mentors, networks, groups, finding out what is accepted within your court, and the software, all the software is going to be compliant with that as well. So making sure you're using a software and then relying on others too, I think is huge.
Mandy, while you're looking for the next question, maybe I can rant about this for 10 seconds. Can we just kill wet signatures dead with the fax machine? Like, this is, I hope there'll be a handful of things that don't make it past the kind of COVID-19 pandemic situation. Wet signatures are the dumbest thing in the world, along with image PDFs, right? Yes. There are a million things that we've been doing for years that have been terrible that we can't carry through during this work from home period. And it's kind of hard to imagine us going back. Man, I just hope wet signatures are one of them. Paper checks too. God, yes. Get me out of paper check world. Like, paper checks are the worst. If you're running a law practice and you get paper checks, like, you've got to endorse them, you've got to sign the back of them. Even if you can take a picture of it and deposit in your bank, or even if you have one of the deposit machines, you have to have someone who is checking your mail on Saturdays and, receiving that check, and checks get lost in the mail and you've got to reissue them. Paper checks are the dumbest thing in the world. Can we get rid of these stupid paper checks? Use LawPay, use credit cards, use ACH, use anything else with your stupid checks and your wet signatures.
Yes, I hope there's definitely a paradigm shift from this on a lot of these paper elements that are happening. I mean, obviously law can be slow moving when it comes to paper and getting rid of it. And let's hope this kind of pushes it in that right direction. I agree 100%.
10 cents per page on Pacer 2. Get rid of it.
Yes.
Gone.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. Well, I think that's about our time here. Ed, thank you so much for talking today with me and answering questions that we have and that the chat has had, and communicating with this awesome this community that we're starting to build here, which is pretty fantastic as well. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'm sad we didn't get to see your co-host, the cat, but maybe on another time.
Maybe we can add another seminar at the end of Bankruptcy Week just for Lego Walters.
Yes.
So this is the end of our session, but I want to say this is the beginning of Bankruptcy Week. If you haven't seen it, there are amazing presentations for the whole rest of this week that can help you add bankruptcy law to your practice. And this is also the beginning of our community.
Absolutely. That's exciting.
So,
we're all excited to have everyone here, so I can't wait for the next sessions to come.
Yeah, and so we will see everyone on Slack going forward.
Yes.
And I'm really looking forward to the interactions on Slack. I think that's going to be an amazing community.
Yes, absolutely. All right, wonderful. Well, everyone, please register for the upcoming sessions that we have starting again tomorrow, and we will be providing information about the Slack group here. I think I just saw a comment that there's been some really good questions that haven't been touched upon. I completely agree. I think it's going to be wonderful to be able to answer a lot of these questions and have everyone really interact in the Slack group. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your evening.